here comes some blatant racism. Hooray! Now, if you think about 1968 and the new Australians, they are coming from places like England, Greece, any of those European, Eastern European places. The attitudes of the current Australians to those new Australians wasn't very nice. And this is seen in Roy's mispronunciation of Mrs. Papalapa Papalax. Oh well, I'm sure she knows who I mean. Ha ha ha. It introduces the issue of attitudes in the Australian community towards the migrant population. We find out later that Roy and Coral's son died in the Vietnam War, okay? And Roy is trying to deal with that as well as this influx of people who essentially his son was fighting for, who were able to come to this country and his son couldn't anyway. There's lots of deep stuff happening there. So this was in particular a common attitude towards new Australians. This is reinforced by Gwen, who is Meg's mum, who hinders Harry and Vic's discovery. Now, Harry and Vic are Tom's parents, and they have immigrated from England, I think, from memory. It shows that the characters live in a really insular world. Now, if you think about even Tweed Heads, living in Tweed Heads, if you go even into Brisbane, or if you go to a bigger city such as Melbourne or Sydney, the people there, I think, are a lot more aware of different cultures because they are exposed to it. I think Tweed Heads is a very insular place because we aren't exposed to that. The world, in a way, is similar to that. They are isolated and they have to move out of, they have to escape their insular world to enable their discoveries. So think about that as they move away and they come back home. What are they actually moving away from? Are they moving away from this insular world so that they can discover a new perception of themselves in the world which they live in? Okay, let's have a look at scene 2. Now, backstage, Tom and Meg. Tom, you going away tomorrow? Here we have that it implies that the characters must move away from the current or established worlds physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Now, going away is an idea with many dimensions. In one sense, it suggests leaving daily routine life in order to have a different perspective on the meanings of that life. Yet it might also refer to death when a person leaves the living world. Now, I can imagine some of you going, oh, Miss, you're looking into it too much, blah, blah, blah. But it is true. We need to think about this idea of going away in terms of discovery. How does going away facilitate or catalyze a character's discovery? I don't think there's anything else there. Okay, let's have a look over the page. Now, we have this really awkward duologue between Tom and Meg. Now, if you think about it, Tom and Meg, they're teenagers. I assume that they like each other. It's very, very awkward. So I suggest that you have a read through it now, just to get a sense of it. So pause the video, read through just the conversation between Meg and Tom until Gwen comes in. Okay, the dialogue or exchange or the duologue between Tom and Meg reinforces Tom's characterization. In this scene, he is characterized as an awkward, self-conscious teenager trying to impress a girl. This is juxtaposed to his confident delivery of Puck's lines and his reference to Chip's Rafferty. Tom is a central character in the play. He's never static, but changes from scene to scene as he learns about himself and discovers the inner strength to accept his death. So think about the fact that Tom is always changing. He never stays the same, and he catalyzes the other characters' discoveries. Is that an important aspect of discovery itself? Is it important for us to never be static in our discoveries? Okay, if you turn over the page just to this section here, again, that conversation between Meg and Tom is still going. Now, yeah, here. So, Meg says, still waters run deep. My father's always saying that. Tom, still waters stink. Gwen and Jim Gwen and Jim come in. Gwen, you were supposed to hurry, not stand round yapping. There are a million things to do. I'll have to do it all, I expect. Tom, I'll met by moonlight. Now, I'll met by moonlight is another intertextual reference which enhances Tom's parallel characterization and also characterizes Gwen by revealing her egocentric behavior by alluding to her as Titania from Midsummer Night's Dream. Now, if you remember, Titania was the queen fairy who was really self-centered and selfish, and she wanted this human boy as her own. She stole this human boy from somebody. So think about how that sort of helps us understand Gwen's character. Now, the quote that says, "Still waters run deep," we have this, what's this say? Quietness in a person can indicate depth of character, which is true of Tom. Now, Tom is a really deep character. He is a very complicated young man. So the fact that Meg has understood and recognised that still waters run deep in Tom is really important for their later progression of their relationship. Now, still waters might also be an image of stagnation, meaning that if you stay still for too long, you might rot and stink. Now, this is true of Gwen, particularly her fear of discovery has led to stagnation in her own life. Okay, I think that's a really good metaphor. That's another technique that you can use. It's a really good metaphor for each of the characters' process of discovery or their journey or experience of discovery. Now, this is important. Now, Gwen's first line in the play is this massive hyperbole. There are a million things to do. I'll have to do it all, I expect. Now, it's important. This characterization is important because you need to compare what Gwen is like at the start of the play to what she is at the end in terms of her attitudes to these ideas. Okay? Let's have a look at the next page. Okay. Now, this section, could you read it first, please? It's comical and tragic at the same time. So have a read of, go and have a read of the rest of the scene, and then we'll continue.